What's up, folks? This is Mopar Man 1978. I'm out here working on the 1996 Jeep Cherokee Sport. I just finished up. Took me a couple days due to weather or whatnot, but had to work on the front suspension. Get down here and I'll show you. I don't have these tires. Had to order the 3 tie rod ends. The track bar was wore out, so we had to get a new track bar. All these parts are Moog. Got these tie rod ends done, track bar replaced, tie rod replaced, adjusted, everything. This section bar here, I can't remember which part of the tie rod. I can't remember the name of it, but anyway. Replaced the stabilizer shock. Like I said, it replaced this bar here. I can't remember the name of it, but the stabilizer shock goes to this, and then it's got a part of one of the other tie rods goes into it, and then it goes down over for the other tie rod for the on the control arm, or the spindle, whatever you want to call it. But one of the things you got to do is I went to Menards and bought a bunch of these solid concrete blocks. Took 3 on each side, plus 2 regular bricks and 2 of the little skinny bricks. I guess you could call those pathway bricks. Anyway, took 2 of those on top. Then what you gotta do is you gotta use the floor jack, and you can't just put it in the middle of the axle here. You gotta set it slightly off towards the passenger side when you jack it up, because the way the suspension's set up, one side will want to sag as it's going up, and the other one's going to be real high, so you got to compensate for that. But anyway, then what I did was I took the same little bricks here. They're probably about inch and a half, and all I did was I stacked them up. Took probably like 7 of them, brought them all the way up to the underside of the spindle here, and there was about an inch and a half gap. And then I take the tires off and I just rest that on there. But the other thing you got to do is, if you're going to work on these Jeeps and you're going to replace the control arms, upper and lower control arms, make sure you only do 1 at a time. Don't try to take 2 of them off at the same time, because the axle will flex, even though you got them, the Jeep sitting on blocks. But anyway, I don't know if you can see it. Right back here on the back of the lower control arm. Let's see if it'll focus. Anyway, there's 2 bolts that come out the back, adjuster bolts with the nuts. What I want to do, this has always helped me out. I pre-soak everything the night before, and then I come out the next day and I use a propane torch and I heat the bolts up, the bolts and the nuts on both sides, to make sure that, especially right around where the nut is, get the bolt and the nut real hot, and then as they're real hot, I spray them with a second coat of penetrating oil, and that seems to soak in around the threads. That's really helped me out quite a bit. But you got to back these nuts almost all the way completely off of this to take the tension off the lower control arm. And then all these damn bolts on these Jeeps are pretty much metric. So make sure you have 6-sided, long and short sockets. I went, quite a while back, I went and bought the electric. I have electric impact, so I went and bought a bunch of sets of long and short 6-sided impact sockets. Anyway, so that's what you got to do. Heat the bolts up with and spray with penetrating oil. Let them sit for a while. If some of the bolts, like the when I took the castle nuts off of the tie rod ends, I really had to heat up the tie rod shaft and the or the part where it goes up through the axle or drag link and whatnot. Anyway, and then I used my combination of a 3-pound hammer and a air-powered air gun with a pickle fork on the end of it to do a lot of this work. But anyway, it went pretty quick. This Jeep, the upper and lower ball joints have been replaced, along with the rotating assembly, the axle. That's what it is. The hubs, with the bearings and everything. I did all that a few months back. That's got new brakes, all that stuff. It's just some of the suspension stuff got replaced, and the other stuff was still good. And then this finally started getting what they call the death wobble, or the shakes. I've never seen a wobble, but it was shaking real bad at a certain speed going down the highway. The whole front end would just shake like somebody was putting a jackhammer to the front of the Jeep. But anyway, got all that fixed today. All I got left is, as you can see, I got to put the tires back on, and yeah, if you have any questions on these Jeeps, I pretty much worked on them inside and out. Feel free to ask. The other thing that I was going to talk about was, in the last video, I talked about all the factory grounds inside the engine bay that were bad, that I had to fix because the factory took the cheap ass way out and used like sheet metal screws and piss poor connectors. Anyway, I fixed all that. Well, come to find out, because I had put the new gas tank and fuel sending unit and everything else in last time, we were still having somewhat of an issue of this thing cutting out, randomly cutting out. It would sit there and idle for a long time, and other times it would just cut out like it was not getting gas and stuff like that. We checked everything else out, still doing it. Come to find out, and you guys have probably already seen the other video, but as a reminder, if somebody's watching this video, you got the factory connector right here that goes to the Jeep's pickup coil inside the distributor. This particular Jeep has the flat plastic disc. It don't have the little electronic knob that bolts down to the shaft where the distributor would be. This one actually has a distributor on it. Anyway, I had to trace these 3 wires all the way back up through to the factory harness itself. From here, I stripped all the stuff off of it. Come to find out, over time, the previous owners of this Jeep, they've just allowed grease and oil and everything else to run down all over the wires and engine block and whatnot. I had to do a lot of cleaning up. I had to replace the valve cover gasket. That was one of the big problems. Anyway, each one of these wires in here got real oily, and with the heat and the cold, whatnot, the insulation deteriorated enough to where it was allowing electrical signal, I guess, to leak out into the other wires. And besides this, the wires were running down through by the spark plug wires as well. And even though spark plug wires are really well insulated, they say to keep any of your electronic ignition stuff that sends a signal away from them as far as possible, like I did on my HEI conversion on my Dodge pickup. It said to take the 2 pickup coil wires coming off the Mopar distributor, wrap them, twist them together, and run them all the way around away from your any spark plug wires, and then wrap them up with like 300 degree 600 volt max black electrical tape. So that's what I did to these. I went ahead and took each one of these wires, because it has a split. Somebody had put a previous split in here, and I snipped the connectors off, and I ran shrink tube on each one of these wires all the way down, all the way up, and then each one of these wires got individually wrapped with this 300 degree 600 volt electrical tape. And then once I got every one of them wrapped with the tape, I wrapped the entire thing really good with tape, and then I went sure and did the around the factory harness, the connectors here. And then just to be on the safe side, I went down and took the pickup coil out, and it had the 3 wires. It always comes, the insulation always comes together on the 3 wires, so there is a one unit. I split them up, did the same thing, wrapped them individually, taped them all up, put them all back together. And that's when I was looking online for random sporadic cutting out of Jeeps and whatnot, and somebody says, well, you checked all the wires in the Jeep. I bet nobody's bothered to check the one back behind where the spare tire goes. I was like, huh, okay. So after we got all this done and it was running a lot better, we went back here, over here to the driver's side. This is a mess in here, but anyway, this back panel, driver's side back panel in the cargo area, if you look in here, right here, let's get a better shot of it, is a factory ground wire. On some Jeeps there's 2, because all these this big wiring harness that runs along the inside of the cavity of the body, they'll have 2 factory ground connections, or they'll have 1. Ours happens to have 1. Well, when I got in here, this factory, another damn sheet metal screw, was completely, had rust all over the connection and rust all over this area. So evidently water's been getting up in here or something. So anyway, took this off, took the connector wire off. There was even paint underneath here. They didn't bother to clean the paint off. Anyway, I cleaned all the paint down to bare metal, cleaned out the threads in the sheet metal of rust, cleaned all the rust off the sheet metal screw itself, cleaned the connector wire connector down to bare metal. Then I sanded all the bare metal off there, and then I used a bunch of dielectric grease and bolted this back up. Come to find out, this wiring harness controls some of the back half of the Jeep, whether it be taillights, whatnot, but it also helps control current going to the fuel pump / fuel sending unit. And then it goes to some other stuff in here. But if you had like multiple accessories, there would be another part of a wiring harness and another ground going here. Anyway, so back behind the panel, where, as you see, the factory donut would go, right here. If you got a Jeep, make sure you check that connection. After I did those 2 things, cleaned the ground and redid this, we have not had any more of the cutting out random miss going down the road or coming into idle or trying to go up a hill or anything like that. I think we finally got rid of that shit. So Jeep's up and running. I'm getting front end's finally done. Get the tires back on, and then eventually we'll get this thing set up to go in. And I think I'm pretty spot on far as putting the parts back together. I took measurements of center to center of how the tie rod ends and other stuff was adjusted underneath the suspension, and made sure everything was level, lined up, whatnot. But you know, you never know, I could be off by a couple hairs on their machine at the tire shop. I don't know. Anyway, at least it'll get it down the road and get it to the tire shop. But everything's been torqued. Like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I had to get this done because this is my mom's Jeep. I figured I'd do this for her, not only because we need another, they need another vehicle besides my dad's truck, but I figured it'd be part of my mom's Mother's Day present. She bought the parts, and I told her I'd put them all on so she didn't have to go spend a bunch of money at the repair shop. Well, definitely not going to take any of our stuff to a dealership, but anyway, there's that. And then, like I said in the last video, I got the truck finished. I'm going to do some fine tuning on the rear leaf springs. I'm going to put them big heavy duty clamps on the over the bottom helper leaf, the real thick helper leaf spring, and clamp them down, and maybe it'll act like a traction bar until I can save up the money to buy some actual Lakewood ones for the truck, and we'll go from there. I want to see how that. It drove down the road great the other day. I didn't have a bunch of bouncing and whatnot in the rear, so it's. Anytime I want, I can put my trailer hitch back on there. If I want to go tow a boat or trailer or whatever, I can do that now, because I didn't trust the other springs. But anyway, we come to a stopping point on the Project Undertaker, the Buick LeSabre 85 Buick LeSabre hearse. It's my sister's project. Till she gets some more funds coming in, saved up, whatnot. It's been put on a stop. My goal is to start working on the Dart. I still got a few things left on the Dart, but anyway, just thought I'd give you an update on this, on the Jeeps. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video.